The rain came down like nails. Elias Crow stood at the window of his small church, watching water turn the main street into a river of mud. His reflection stared back at him. Thin face, graying hair, eyes that looked older than his 43 years. He'd built a life here. 5 years of sermons, of burials, of trying to convince himself that the past stayed buried if you just refused to dig it up. He was wrong. The horses appeared first, 6 of them, moving slow through the downpour. Then the riders. Elias felt something cold settle in his stomach, a recognition he didn't want to admit. He knew men like these. Hell, he'd been men like these. Sarah Mitchell ran past his window, clutching her son Thomas to her chest. The boy couldn't have been more than 8. Elias moved toward the door, but his hand froze on the handle. His other hand, the one he never talked about, the one with scars running from wrist to elbow, started to shake. "Don't," he whispered to himself. "You're not that anymore." The gunshot cracked like thunder. Elias was through this door before he could think. The rain hit him hard, cold enough to hurt. Sarah was down in the mud, Thomas screaming beside her. The riders had circled them, and the one in front, lean with a beard that couldn't hide the knife scar splitting his face, was laughing. "Looks like the church mouse wants to play," Scarface said. Elias raised his hands. "She's got nothing. The boy's got nothing. Whatever you want, it's not here." "See, that's where you're wrong, preacher." Scarface swung down from his horse, boots hitting the mud with a wet slap. "We want entertainment. Town this dead, man's got to make his own fun." The other riders laughed. Elias counted them automatically. 6 total, all armed, spread out with the casual confidence of men who'd never faced real resistance. His mind was already calculating angles, distances, who'd draw first, where the cover was. He crushed those thoughts down hard. "Take me instead," Elias said. "Let them go." Scarface studied him with eyes that had seen too much dying. "You know what? I like that. Boys, we got ourselves a volunteer." Thomas was crying high and broken. Sarah tried to stand, slipped in the mud. One of the riders, young, maybe 20, with a wild look that spoke of too much whiskey and not enough conscience, grabbed her arm. "Leave her alone." Elias took a step forward. The young one's gun came up fast. Sarah screamed, and Elias watched, helpless, useless, weak, as the bullet punched through her chest. She fell wrong. The kind of wrong that said she wasn't getting back up. Thomas's scream was different now. Not fear, not pain, something worse. The sound of a world ending. "Shut him up," Scarface said. "No." Elias started running, but the mud grabbed his boots and he was too slow, always too slow, and the young one's gun swung toward the boy. The second shot was quieter somehow, or maybe Elias just couldn't hear anything over the roaring in his head. Thomas folded like paper. 8 years old. Elias had baptized him 3 summers back. The boy had laughed when the water splashed his face. He wasn't laughing now. "Now then." Scarface grabbed Elias by the collar, dragged him close enough to smell tobacco and old blood. "Let's talk about that entertainment." Elias hit him. Not a preacher's slap. Not a warning. A full-force strike that drove Scarface's nose sideways with a crack of cartilage. The man stumbled back, blood mixing with rain, shock written across his face. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Then Elias smiled. It wasn't a good smile. It was the smile of a man remembering things he'd spent 5 years trying to forget. Cold, calculating, completely absent of anything resembling mercy. "Oh," one of the riders whispered. "Oh, shit." Scarface wiped blood from his face. "You just made the last mistake of your—" Elias moved. Not like a preacher, like something that had learned to kill before it learned to pray. He caught Scarface's gun arm, twisted it wrong, felt the elbow pop, used the screaming man as a shield when the others drew their weapons. The bullets hit Scarface instead. 3 of them. He jerked with each impact, dead weight suddenly, and Elias shoved the body toward the nearest rider's horse. The animal panicked, reared. Its rider went down hard. Elias dove for the church steps as gunfire tore chunks out of the wood. His shoulder hit the doorframe wrong, sent pain shooting down his arm. He rolled into the darkness inside, breathing hard, tasting blood in his mouth. Outside, Scarface's body lay in the mud. Sarah and Thomas weren't moving. The 4 remaining riders were shouting, spreading out, surrounding the church. Elias sat with his back against the wall, staring at his shaking hands. 5 years. 5 years of peace, of pretending, of believing he could bury what he'd been. "I'm sorry," he said to the empty room. To Sarah, to Thomas, to whatever version of himself had thought redemption was possible. "I'm so sorry." Then he stood up and walked to the back room, to the loose floorboard he'd nailed down on his first day here. The one he'd told himself he'd never open. His fingers found the gap. Wood groaned. Beneath, wrapped in oiled cloth, lay the things Elias Crow had carried before he became a preacher. 2 Colt peacemakers, worn grips fitted perfectly to his hands, a knife with a blade that had tasted more blood than he could count, a gun belt that settled around his waist like it had never left. He checked the cylinders automatically. 12 shots, 4 men. The math worked. "Preacher!" One of them was at the front door now, voice full of false bravado. "Come on out. We'll make it quick." Elias looked at himself in the small mirror above the wash basin. Same face, same gray hair, but the eyes were different now, darker, older, familiar. "No," he said quietly. "You won't." He kicked the back door open and went out into the rain. The first rider died before he knew Elias was there. Single shot through the temple as he rode past the alley between the church and the general store. The man slid from his saddle without a sound. The others heard the gunshot, started shouting. Elias was already moving, using the buildings like he'd used trenches during the war, staying low, staying quiet. The rain helped, washing away his tracks, drowning out the sound of his breathing. He found the second one trying to reload behind a water trough. The man looked up, saw Elias, opened his mouth to scream. Elias shot him twice, chest and throat. No mercy, no hesitation. "Jackson? Miller?" The young one, the one who'd killed Thomas, was close now, voice cracking with fear. "Where'd you go?" Elias stepped out behind him. "They're not coming." The young one spun, gun coming up, but his hands were shaking too hard. Elias wasn't shaking at all. His first shot took the gun from the kid's hand, spinning it away into the mud. His second shot took the kid's knee. The scream was satisfying in a way that made Elias hate himself. He walked forward slowly, boots splashing. The kid was on his back now, hands pressed to his shattered knee, face white with shock. "Please," the kid gasped. "Please, I didn't mean—" "You shot a child." Elias's voice sounded strange to his own ears, flat, empty. 8 years old, you looked him in the eyes and pulled the trigger. He was crying. "I just wanted him to stop. You didn't think." Elias crouched down close enough to see his reflection in the kid's terrified eyes. "That's the problem with boys like you. You never think about what comes after." What are you going to do?" Elias stood up. "I'm going to show you what comes after." The shot echoed across the empty street. 1 left. Elias found him trying to mount his horse behind the saloon, movements frantic and clumsy. The man saw Elias and froze, hands raised. "I didn't shoot them," he said quickly. "I didn't even want to come here. It was all Cutter's idea. I was just—" "Cutter?" Elias asked. "That the one with the scar?" Yeah, he's the boss. Was the boss. Look, I got money. I can pay you." "Where's the rest of your gang?" The man's eyes went wide. The rest? This was it. Just the 6 of us." "You're lying. I swear we were supposed to meet up with the main group at the mining camp up in Copper Ridge, but right now it's was just the 6. "Mining camp," Elias repeated. "Copper Ridge. How many in the main group?" 15, maybe 20. "Look, I can take you there. I can help you." Elias shot him. The body hit the mud with a wet thump. The horse bolted, disappeared into the rain. Elias stood there for a moment, guns still raised, listening to the silence. Then slowly, he became aware of the faces. Windows all up and down the street, people watching, his congregation. The people he'd preached to, buried their dead, married their children. They were looking at him like they'd never seen him before. Because they hadn't. Sheriff Wade came out first, old and careful, hands visible. "Elias, that really you?" Elias looked down at the guns in his hands, at the bodies in the street, at the rain washing Sarah's blood toward the storm drains. "No," he said. "Elias Crow died today." He walked back to the church, past Thomas's small body, past Sarah's wide-open eyes. Inside, he found a bottle of whiskey someone had left as a gift. He'd never opened it, never touched it. He opened it now, drank until the burn in his throat matched the burn in his chest. When Sheriff Wade found him, Elias was sitting on the floor, staring at nothing. "What happened to you?" Wade asked quietly. Elias laughed, sharp and bitter. "I remembered." "Remembered what?" "What I was. Before I tried to be something better." He took another drink. "The war, the things we did, the people I—" He shook his head. "I thought I could bury it, build something clean on top of all that blood." Wade sat down heavily. "And now?" "Now?" Elias looked at his hands, scarred, steady, still carrying the weight of the guns he'd sworn never to touch again. "Now I know there's no burying it, no running from it. That mining camp they mentioned. Copper Ridge? That's where the rest of them are." "Elias, you can't—" "I can. I did." Elias stood, movement sharp despite the whiskey. "And I'm going to finish it." "That's suicide. 20 men? You'll never—" "I know." Elias checked his guns, movements automatic, muscle memory from a lifetime ago. "But that boy is dead because I hesitated, because I tried to be something I'm not. I won't make that mistake again." Wade stood slowly. "What do you need?" "Nothing." Elias grabbed his coat, old and worn but still serviceable. "Stay here. Keep the town safe. If I don't come back—" He paused. "Tell them I'm sorry. For what I was. For what I had to become." "And if you do come back?" Elias looked at him with eyes that had gone cold and distant. "I won't." The rain was still falling when he rode out an hour later, heading north toward the mountains. The town watched him go, the preacher who'd saved them, the killer who'd murdered 4 men in their streets, the stranger they'd never really known at all. Elias didn't look back. The horse's name was Redemption. He'd bought it 3 years ago, thought the name was fitting for a man trying to leave his past behind. Now it felt like a joke. You couldn't redeem what you'd always been. The trail up to Copper Ridge was steep and treacherous, made worse by the rain that had turned to sleet as elevation increased. Elias's coat was soaked through, his fingers numb on the reins. He didn't care. The cold helped, actually, kept his mind sharp, focused. He made camp that first night in a shallow cave, built a small fire that gave more smoke than heat. Sat there watching shadows dance on the rock wall, thinking about Thomas's laugh, Sarah's kindness, the life he'd built and destroyed in the span of an afternoon. His hands found the guns without thinking, began the ritual of cleaning and checking. Muscle memory. How many times had he done this? During the war, after the war, in all those bloody years before he'd found this town and tried to pretend he was someone else. The guns were tools. Nothing more. He'd learned that young. Some men treated them like sacred objects, gave them names, talked about them like they had souls. Elias knew better. They were just metal and wood, mechanisms for turning intention into finality. The intention was what mattered, and his intention right now was simple: make them pay. He slept badly, dreaming of faces he'd tried to forget. Men he'd killed during the war, men he'd killed after. The line between soldier and murderer had blurred somewhere in the middle, until he couldn't remember which side he'd started on. Morning came gray and cold. Elias ate jerky that tasted like sawdust, drank water that made his teeth ache, mounted up, and kept riding. The mining camp appeared on the second day, nestled in a narrow valley between 2 peaks. Elias studied it from a ridge above, counting buildings, spotting guard positions, mapping escape routes. 23 men. He'd counted 23 distinct figures moving between the structures. The smart move was to wait, watch their patterns, find a weakness. Elias didn't wait. He rode down the main trail at noon when the sun was highest and shadows were shortest. Rode right up to the gate like he owned the place, like he had every right to be there. The guards saw him coming, exchanged glances, raised their rifles but didn't fire. Confused, cautious. Elias stopped 10 feet from the gate, hands visible on the reins. "I'm here for the man in charge," he said, voice carrying clear and cold. "Tell him Elias Crow wants to discuss the murder of Sarah Mitchell and her son Thomas." One guard laughed. "The hell are you talking about?" "6 of your men rode into my town yesterday. Killed a woman and a child for entertainment. I killed them for justice." Elias's eyes were flat, emotionless. "Now I'm here to extend the same courtesy to whoever gave the orders. The laughter died. The guards looked at each other, then at Elias, then at the camp behind them. "You're crazy," the first guard said. "Probably," Elias agreed, "but I'm also here, and I'm not leaving until this is settled." "Settle this, preacher man," the voice came from behind the guards. They parted, revealing a man in his 50s, well-dressed for an outlaw camp, with a face that spoke of too many years making too many bad decisions. "You must be Elias Crow," the man said. "I'm Dutch Kincaid, this is my operation. And I have to say I'm impressed you made it this far." "The 6 who died? They worked for you?" "They did. Good men, most of them." "You killed them?" "Yes." Kincaid smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Mind if I ask how?" "Quick, clean, more mercy than they showed that boy." "Mercy." Kincaid tasted the word. Interesting concept coming from a man who rode into a camp of armed outlaws alone. "That's not mercy, friend. That's suicide." Elias's hands moved. Not fast, not dramatic, just smooth, practiced, certain. Both guns cleared leather, both hammers clicked back, both barrels aimed straight at Kincaid's chest. "Or," Elias said quietly, "it's faith." The camp exploded into motion, men shouting, diving for cover, guns appearing from everywhere at once. Kincaid stumbled backward, eyes wide, mouth working without sound. Elias shot the guard on the left first, throat shot, quick and clean. The second guard was bringing his rifle up when Elias's other gun barked, sent him spinning into the dirt. Then he kicked Redemption hard and the horse bolted forward, straight through the gate, into the chaos beyond. Bullets screamed past him. Something tugged at his coat. Something else burned across his ribs, hot and sharp, but not deep enough to stop him. He fired both guns, not aiming at men but at targets, lanterns, barrels, anything that would create confusion. Oil spilled, caught fire. Men scattered. Elias threw himself from Redemption's back, hit the ground rolling, came up behind a supply wagon. "Pin him down," Kincaid was screaming. 20 gold eagles to whoever brings me his head." Gunfire erupted from every direction. Wood splintered above Elias's head. He counted shots, timed the reloads, watched the patterns. Waited for the moment when they had to stop to breathe. When it came, he moved. 3 men by the bunkhouse. Elias took them down in quick succession. Chest, head, chest. No wasted bullets. No hesitation. The muscle memory was back full force now, his body remembering what his mind had tried to forget. This was what he'd been built for. Not prayer, not peace, not redemption. This. A bullet caught him in the shoulder, spun him half around. Elias gritted his teeth against the pain, kept moving, returned fire even as blood soaked his shirt. 2 more down, then 3. The remaining outlaws were regrouping now, finding their courage in numbers. Elias's guns clicked empty. He ducked behind a water trough, hands working automatically to reload. 12 bullets left, maybe 15 men still standing. The math didn't work anymore. Something crashed behind him. Elias turned to see 3 outlaws coming around the bunkhouse, cutting off his escape. He raised his guns, but they had rifles, and at this range, the ground shook. No, not the ground. The mine shaft. The one he'd noticed earlier, half collapsed, dangerous even before the gunfight started. Now with bullets hitting the support beams, with fire spreading from the oil barrels. "Fall back," someone screamed. "The mine's going." The sound was like the earth groaning, timber splintering, stone grinding against stone. Elias ran, not away from the mine, toward it. The outlaws behind him were shouting, confused, trying to figure out what kind of madman runs into a collapsing mine. Elias didn't care about their confusion. He cared about the darkness, the cover, the chance to reload and regroup. He made it inside just as the entrance started to cave. Ducked and rolled as rocks fell where he'd been standing. The darkness swallowed him whole, cut him off from the sunlight, from the gunfire, from everything except his own ragged breathing and the sound of the earth trying to kill him. For a moment, Elias just lay there in the dark, bleeding and exhausted. The mine groaned around him, unstable, ready to finish what the outlaws had started. Then, from somewhere deep in his chest, he started laughing. It wasn't a good laugh. It was the laugh of a man who'd found something true and terrible about himself. The laugh of someone who'd finally stopped pretending. He was going to die here. Probably. Maybe. But if he was going to die, he'd do it his way, not cowering, not praying for salvation that would never come. Fighting. Always fighting. Elias pushed himself up, felt the wound in his shoulder scream in protest, ignored it, reloaded his guns by touch in the darkness, started moving deeper into the mine, away from the blocked entrance, searching for another way out. Because that's what men like him did. They survived, no matter what it cost. The mine shaft swallowed sound. Elias's breathing echoed off unseen walls, and somewhere far above, the earth continued its slow work of burying him alive. Dust hung thick in the air, caught in the thin beam of light filtering through cracks in the collapsed entrance. His shoulder throbbed with each heartbeat, warm blood still seeping through his fingers where he pressed against the wound. He'd been shot before, more times than he cared to count, but it never got easier. The shock wore off fast, replaced by pain that made his vision swim. "Get some torches!" Kincaid's voice filtered through the rubble, muffled but clear enough. "I want him dragged out of there, dead or dying, I don't care which." Elias moved deeper into the darkness, one hand trailing along the rough-hewn wall, the other gripping his Colt. His boots crunched on loose gravel. The air grew colder the further he went, carrying the smell of wet stone and old timber. A junction appeared ahead, barely visible in the dying light from the entrance. Two passages split off from the main shaft, one sloping downward, the other climbing toward the surface. Elias paused, listening. Water dripped somewhere in the lower passage. The upper one carried a faint whisper of fresh air. He took the lower path, not because it was smart, because the men outside would expect him to seek escape, to claw his way toward daylight like a trapped animal. They'd focus their search on the upper tunnels, the obvious routes to freedom. Elias had learned young that survival meant doing what your enemies didn't expect. The passage narrowed, forcing him to turn sideways in places. His shoulder scraped against stone, sending fresh agony shooting through his arm. He bit down hard, tasted blood where his teeth cut into his lip. Kept moving. The tunnel opened into a wider chamber. Elias stopped, waiting for his eyes to adjust to the deeper darkness. Gradually, shapes emerged from the black. Mining equipment, abandoned and rusting. A cart with one wheel missing. Pickaxes scattered across the floor like discarded bones. And bodies. 3 of them, partially covered by rockfall. Miners, from the look of their clothes. Dead long enough that they'd stopped smelling like death and started smelling like earth. One still clutched a pickaxe, frozen in whatever final moment had taken him. Elias knelt beside the nearest corpse, working quickly despite the pain. The dead miner's coat was intact, heavy canvas that would hide bloodstains better than Elias's own ruined shirt. He stripped it off carefully, muttering an apology the dead man couldn't hear. "Sorry, friend, but you're past needing it." He shrugged into the coat, gritting his teeth as the movement aggravated his wounded shoulder. The fabric was stiff with age and dirt, but it would do. He took the miner's hat too, and a lamp that still had oil in its reservoir. Above, voices echoed through the tunnels. Kincaid's men spreading out, searching, the scrape of boots on stone, the clank of weapons. "Spread out! He's got to be down here somewhere. Dutch, this whole place could come down any second. We should—" "I don't pay you to think, Riley. I pay you to follow orders. Find him." Elias lit the lamp, keeping the flame low. Yellow light pushed back the darkness, revealing more of the chamber. Another passage led out the far side, this one showing signs of recent use, footprints in the dust, marks on the walls where shoulders had brushed past. He followed it. The new tunnel wound through the mountain's guts like an intestine. Elias counted his steps, trying to maintain some sense of direction, but the twists and turns made it impossible. He could be heading back toward the camp or away from it, or down into some forgotten depth that hadn't seen sunlight since the mountain was young. Didn't matter. He kept moving. The passage split again. And again. A maze of worked stone and natural cave, intersecting and diverging with no apparent pattern. Elias marked his path with small scratches on the wall. Not enough to be obvious, just enough that he could find his way back if needed. If he lived that long. The voices behind him had faded now, either grown distant or absorbed by the stone. Elias paused to check his guns, reload the spent chambers. 8 bullets left. He had more ammunition in his coat, but not much. Maybe enough for 2 more reloads if he was careful. The miners hadn't been careful. Elias found their work site in a chamber that smelled of sulfur and old explosives. Tools scattered everywhere, lunch pails still sitting on a makeshift table, playing cards frozen mid-hand. Whatever had killed them had happened fast. He studied the ceiling, saw the cracks spreading through the support beams, saw where someone had tried to reinforce them, failed, given up. This whole section was unstable. A strong wind might bring it down. An idea formed, dark and reckless. Elias searched the chamber until he found what he was looking for. Dynamite. Old, probably unstable, exactly what he needed. 6 sticks, bundled together with twine that looked ready to disintegrate. He handled them gently, like they were made of glass and prayers. 1 stick went into his coat pocket. The other 5 he placed carefully at the base of the weakest support beam. He had no way to detonate them remotely, no fuse long enough to give him time to get clear. What he had was matches and a death wish. Elias lit the fuse and ran. The tunnel floor tried to trip him. His boots slid on loose gravel. The lamp swung wildly in his hand, making shadows dance and leap like living things. Behind him, the fuse hissed and sparked, burning faster than he'd expected. He dove around a corner just as the world exploded. The sound was beyond hearing, beyond comprehension. It hit him like a physical force, drove the air from his lungs, rattled his teeth in his skull. The tunnel floor heaved. Stone rained from the ceiling. Elias covered his head with his arms and prayed to things he didn't believe in. The collapse went on forever, tons of rock falling, crashing, grinding. The mountain reshaping itself in seconds of violent geology. Then, silence. Elias lay in the dark. His lamp had gone out, listening to dust settle and stone groan. Every part of him hurt. His shoulder screamed, his ribs felt cracked, blood ran into his eyes from a cut on his forehead he didn't remember getting, but he was alive. He fumbled for matches with shaking hands, got the lamp relit on the 3rd try. The passage behind him was gone, filled completely with rubble. No going back that way. He was cut off from the entrance, from Kincaid's men, from everything, trapped. Elias laughed, sharp and bitter. Perfect. Just perfect. He pushed himself upright, every movement agony. The passage ahead looked intact, at least. He limped forward, one hand on the wall for support, listening for sounds of pursuit. Nothing, just the mountain's slow breathing. The tunnel climbed now, steep enough that he had to use both hands in places. His wounded shoulder protested every pull, every stretch. Blood loss was making him lightheaded. He needed to stop the bleeding, needed water, needed rest, kept climbing. The air changed, grew fresher. Elias felt it before he saw it, a draft carrying the smell of pine and snow. He rounded a bend, and there it was, daylight. Not the main entrance, but some kind of ventilation shaft, narrow and vertical, climbing toward a circle of sky. Elias looked up at it, then down at his bleeding shoulder, then back up. 30 feet of rough-cut stone with handholds that might or might not support his weight. "You're joking," he said to no one. The mountain didn't answer. He started climbing. The first 10 feet weren't bad. The handholds were solid, cut deep into the rock by miners who'd needed reliable access. Elias made good time despite his shoulder, using his legs to push more than his arms to pull. Then he hit the section where the rock had sheared away, leaving a smooth face with nothing to grip. Elias hung there, legs dangling over 30 feet of empty air, fingers cramping on the last good handhold. His shoulder felt like it was tearing itself apart. Blood dripped from his fingertips, fell into darkness below. For a moment, just a moment, he considered letting go. It would be easy, quick. No more pain, no more memories, no more pretending he was anything other than what he'd always been. Thomas's face appeared in his mind. 8 years old, smiling before the bullet took him. Elias reached up with his bad arm. The pain was incredible, white-hot, blinding. His fingers scrabbled against smooth stone, found nothing, kept searching. His boots kicked against the wall, seeking purchase that wasn't there. Then his hand closed on something, a root, thin and tough, growing through a crack in the stone. He pulled. The root held, barely. Elias got his other hand up, found another grip, hauled himself higher. His shoulder was screaming. His vision was going dark at the edges. He could feel the root starting to pull free, hear the soft tearing sound as it ripped from the stone. 5 more feet. 4. 3. The root gave way. Elias lunged, got both hands over the lip of the shaft, kicked wildly for a foothold. For one terrible second, he hung there, legs dangling, arms burning, certain he was about to fall. Then his boot found stone. He pushed, scrambled, dragged himself over the edge, and lay gasping in the snow. Snow. He was out. He'd made it. Elias rolled onto his back, staring up at pine branches and gray sky. His whole body shook with exhaustion and shock. Blood soaked his borrowed coat, turned the snow beneath him pink. He gave himself 30 seconds. Just 30 seconds to not move, not think, not be anything except alive. Then he forced himself to stand. The ventilation shaft had deposited him on the mountain's western slope, maybe half a mile from the mining camp. He could see smoke rising through the trees. The fire he'd started was still burning. Good. Let it burn. Let it consume everything Kincaid had built. But the camp was still active. He could hear shouts, see movement. They weren't broken yet. Hurt, yes. Confused, but not beaten. Elias checked his guns. Still had 6 bullets. The dynamite in his pocket hadn't exploded when he fell, which seemed like a minor miracle. His body was a catalog of injuries, gunshot wound, cracked ribs, countless cuts and bruises. But he could still walk, still shoot, still finish this. He made his way down slope, moving from tree to tree, using the terrain for cover. The snow helped, muffling his footsteps. He could feel it seeping into his boots, turning his feet numb. Added it to the list of things that hurt. Voices ahead. Elias dropped behind a fallen log, peered through the branches. 2 outlaws moving through the trees with rifles, searching for him probably. Making too much noise, watching the ground instead of the trees. Amateur mistakes. Crazy bastard, one was saying. Brought the whole mine down. Dutch is losing his mind. We should just clear out, the other replied. Leave Kincaid to his obsession. This whole job's gone to hell. And go where? We're wanted in 3 territories. At least here we got shelter, steady work. Elias shot the first one through the throat. The second one spun, trying to locate the source of the gunfire, and Elias put a bullet through his chest before he could raise his rifle. Both men went down. The forest went quiet again. 5 bullets left. Elias moved to the bodies, took their ammunition. Rifle cartridges, no good for his Colts, but one had a revolver at his belt. Older model, badly maintained, but it would shoot. Elias took the man's ammunition belt too. Now he had options. He continued downslope, circling wide around the camp. The fire had spread to 2 more buildings now, sending black smoke into the afternoon sky. Men were running with buckets, trying to contain it, but the wind was against them. Elias watched from the tree line, counting. 15 men visible, maybe more inside the buildings. Kincaid would be in his office, the largest structure at the camp's center. Stone foundation, solid walls. Built to last. Built to withstand attack. Getting to Kincaid meant going through everyone else. 15 men, minimum. 5 bullets in his good gun, 6 in the revolver he'd taken. 11 shots, 15 targets. The math still didn't work. Unless. Elias's eyes went to the horses. A dozen of them, tied to a rail near the stables. Nervous from the fire, pulling at their leads, ready to bolt at the first opportunity. He worked his way closer, staying in the shadows. The camp's attention was focused on the fire, on containing the damage, on searching for him in all the wrong places. Nobody was watching the horses. Elias cut the first lead with his knife, then the second, then the third. The horses stirred, sensing freedom, but didn't bolt yet. He needed something more. His hand went to the dynamite in his pocket. 1 stick. That's all he had. 1 chance to create enough chaos to cover his approach. He studied the camp's layout, calculating blast radius, debris pattern, where men would run when the explosion hit. The fire had spread to the bunkhouse now. If he could bring that building down, block the main path between it and Kincaid's office. Elias moved quickly, got as close as he dared to the burning bunkhouse, keeping to the shadows. The heat was intense, made his eyes water. He could hear men shouting inside, trying to save their belongings before the fire consumed everything. He lit the dynamite's fuse, counted to 3, threw it through the bunkhouse window. Then he was running, back toward the horses, as the world exploded behind him. The blast was bigger than he'd expected. The bunkhouse didn't just collapse, it disintegrated. Burning timber and stone shrapnel sprayed in every direction. Men screamed. Something hot kissed Elias's neck as he dove behind the water trough. The horses panicked. Their high screams cut through the chaos as they bolted, some still trailing their cut leads, others kicking free and running wild through the camp. Hooves thundered past Elias's hiding spot. Men shouted, tried to grab reins, got trampled for their trouble. Perfect chaos. Elias came up shooting, 2 men down before they knew he was there. A third turned, got his gun halfway up before Elias's bullet caught him in the face. The man behind him tried to run, took a shot in the back that sent him sprawling. 8 bullets left between both guns. He'd lost count of how many men were still standing. There, by the trough, gunfire erupted from 3 directions at once. Elias rolled, felt bullets tear through the space where he'd been. Came up behind a supply wagon, returned fire blind. Heard someone scream, didn't know if he'd hit anything. His shoulder wound had reopened. Blood ran down his arm, made his grip slippery. He switched the good gun to his left hand, kept the borrowed revolver in his right. Ambidextrous shooting, something he'd learned during the war when staying alive meant adapting fast. Movement to his left. Elias spun, fired twice. The first shot missed. The second caught the outlaw in the knee, dropped him screaming. Elias put a third round through his head. Waste of a bullet, but the screaming was getting to him. 5 shots left, maybe 6. He'd lost count. The camp was full smoke now, the fire spreading unchecked. Visibility was down to a few yards. Elias used it, moved through the chaos like a ghost, shooting when he had clear targets, vanishing when he didn't. Another man down. Another. The outlaws were firing at shadows, at each other, at nothing. Panic had set in. Then Kincaid's voice cut through the madness. Fall back to the office. Defensive positions. Move. The outlaws retreated in a ragged line, covering each other, moving with the discipline of men who'd done this before. Elias counted 7 reaching the office. 7 men behind stone walls with rifle ports. His guns clicked empty. Elias crouched behind the wagon, hands working automatically to reload. His fingers were clumsy with blood and exhaustion. A cartridge slipped from his grip, disappeared into the mud. He cursed, fumbled for another. Elias Crow! Kincaid's voice boomed from the office. I know you're out there. I know you're hurt. This is over. Elias got the cylinder loaded, snapped it shut. Not yet it isn't. You killed 17 of my men, destroyed my camp. For what? A woman and a brat who were dead before you even started? The words hit harder than bullets. Because Kincaid was right. Sarah and Thomas were gone. Nothing Elias did now would bring them back. But that wasn't why he was here anymore. They deserved better, Elias called back. Better than dying in the mud while good people watched and did nothing. We're outlaws, Crow. We take what we want. That's the only law that matters out here. Then here's another law. Elias stood up, walked into the open, guns raised. Blood dripped from his sleeve, smoke swirled around him like a shroud. You take, I take back. You kill, I kill more. Keep going until one side runs out of people. Kincaid appeared in the office doorway, rifle in hand, 6 men flanking him. That's suicide. Probably, Elias agreed, but I'm past caring. For a moment, they just stood there. 2 men who'd chosen violence, who'd built their lives on other people's deaths, facing each other across a burning camp. Then Kincaid smiled. You know what? I respect that. I really do. But respect doesn't mean mercy. He raised his rifle. Elias was faster. His first shot took Kincaid in the shoulder, spun him back. The second missed as Kincaid stumbled. Then the office erupted with muzzle flashes as 6 rifles opened fire at once. Elias dove, rolled, came up behind a water barrel. Wood exploded around him. Water gushed out, mixed with his blood, turned the ground to pink mud. 6 against 1. No cover worth mentioning. 5 bullets left. The math finally didn't work. Elias closed his eyes, just for a second. Saw Sarah's face. Thomas's smile. The town that had given him 5 years of something like peace opened his eyes. If this was the end, he'd make it count. He stood up into the gunfire, both Colts blazing. Shot the first rifleman through the chest, the second through the throat. The third got his rifle up in time to catch Elias's bullet with his forehead instead of his face. Return fire hit Elias in the leg, in the side, punched through his already wounded shoulder and nearly made him drop his gun. He stayed upright through sheer will, kept shooting, kept moving forward. 2 more down. 3. His guns clicked empty. The last rifleman was reloading, hands shaking, eyes wide with the kind of fear that comes from watching 6 men die in as many seconds. Elias drew his knife. The outlaw dropped his rifle, turned, ran. Elias let him go, turned toward the office door toward Kincaid, who was on the ground clutching his bleeding shoulder. "Wait," Kincaid gasped. "Wait, we can—" "No," Elias said. "We can't." He walked into the office. The interior was surprisingly well appointed. Rugs on the floor, a desk made of real oak, books on shelves, Shakespeare, Dickens, Twain. Kincaid had built himself a little kingdom out here, complete with culture and comfort, all of it about to burn. Elias found the safe in the back room, combination lock, heavy iron. He studied it for maybe 10 seconds, then shot the lock mechanism 3 times with his remaining bullets. The door swung open. Money. More money than Elias had seen in years. Stacks of bills, leather bags of coins, jewelry, all the accumulated wealth of Kincaid's operation. Blood money. Stolen from people who couldn't fight back. Elias started loading it into saddlebags he found hanging on the wall. Methodical, thorough. His hands were steady despite the blood loss, despite the pain, despite everything. Behind him, Kincaid had dragged himself to the doorway. You can't take that. I'll hunt you. I'll find you, and you'll bleed out in about 20 minutes, Elias said without turning around. Shoulder wound like that, you clipped the subclavian artery. Already lost too much blood to make it down the mountain. You're not leaving me to die? I'm not doing anything. Elias finished loading the bags. You're dying because you got shot. Actions, consequences. You should understand that. He walked past Kincaid without looking down. Out into the smoke and firelight. The camp was destroyed. Bodies everywhere, the fire spreading to engulf the last standing structures. 17 men dead. Maybe more. All because 6 of them thought they could kill a woman and child without consequences. Elias found a horse that hadn't bolted, a gray mare, calm despite the chaos. He loaded the saddlebags, pulled himself into the saddle with his good arm. Every movement was agony. He'd lost too much blood, taken too much damage, might not make it back to town, might die in the saddle somewhere on the mountain, just another corpse for the snow to cover. But the money would make it. He'd tie himself to the saddle if he had to, make sure someone got it back to the people Kincaid had stolen from. The mare sensed his weakness, tried to turn back toward the other horses. Elias corrected her firmly, pointed her toward the trail down the mountain. Behind him, the mining camp burned. Smoke rose into the evening sky like a signal fire, visible for miles. Let them see it, Elias thought. Let them know what happens when you push a man past his breaking point. The trail down was worse than the climb up had been. Ice had formed overnight, made the path treacherous. The mare picked her way carefully, but twice she slipped, nearly sent them both tumbling down the mountainside. Elias tied himself to the saddle with his belt. If he passed out, when he passed out, at least he wouldn't fall. Night came early in the mountains. Darkness fell like a curtain, left him blind and bleeding and barely conscious. The mare kept walking, following the trail by some animal instinct Elias didn't understand. He dreamed or hallucinated. Sarah appeared beside him, walking alongside the horse, her dress unstained by blood. She didn't speak, just looked at him with eyes full of sadness and something else. Pity, maybe. Or disappointment. I'm sorry, Elias mumbled. I tried to be better. But she faded before he could finish. Thomas took her place, young and whole, smiling that gap-toothed smile. He pointed ahead down the trail toward something Elias couldn't see. The mare stumbled. Elias jerked awake. Had he been asleep? How long? And realized dawn was breaking. Gray light filtered through the pine trees. The trail had leveled out. They were off the mountain. The town appeared ahead like a mirage. Familiar buildings, the church with its crooked steeple. Home, except it wasn't home anymore. Could never be home again. The mare carried him into the main street just as the sun cleared the eastern peaks. Early risers stopped to stare. Someone screamed. Someone else ran for the sheriff. Elias untied himself from the saddle with clumsy fingers. Tried to dismount. His leg gave out and he went down hard, tasted dirt and blood. Strong hands caught him before he hit the ground. Easy there, Sheriff Wade's voice rough with age and worry. Easy. We got you. The bags, Elias managed. Saddlebags, money. Kincaid's money. Give it back. The people he stole from. We'll handle it. Right now I need. Elias tried to focus, but his vision was going dark. Need you to tell them. Tell them I'm sorry, that I tried. You can tell them yourself when you wake up. But Elias was already falling down into darkness deeper than any mine shaft, quieter than any church. The last thing he heard was Wade shouting for the doctor, and somewhere far away the sound of a child laughing. He woke to white walls and the smell of carbolic. Pain, immediate and all-consuming, told him he was alive before his eyes could focus. Every breath hurt. Every heartbeat was agony. Don't move, a woman's voice, unfamiliar. You're lucky to be breathing at all. Elias turned his head, slowly, carefully, and found a gray-haired woman in an apron standing beside his bed. The doctor's wife, he remembered. Martha something. How long? His voice came out as a croak. 3 days. We almost lost you twice. That shoulder wound was infected. You had 2 cracked ribs, a bullet in your leg we had to dig out, and enough blood loss to kill a horse. She shook her head. Whatever you did up in those mountains, it nearly killed you. Did the money get distributed? Sheriff Wade handled it. Every family that Kincaid's gang robbed got their due. There's still some left over. A lot, actually. Wade's holding it for you. Don't want it. Martha gave him a look that said she'd heard that before and didn't believe it. We'll see how you feel when you can stand up. She left him alone with his pain and his thoughts. Neither were good company. Over the next week, Elias learned the full cost of what he'd done. 23 men dead at the mining camp, 4 more in town. 27 lives ended because he'd chosen violence over everything else. The town treated him like a hero. People brought food, offered thanks, wanted to shake his hand. He refused all of it. He wasn't a hero. Heroes saved people. He'd just killed the ones who needed killing. Sheriff Wade visited on the 8th day, pulled up a chair beside the bed. Town council met yesterday, Wade said without preamble. They want to know what you're planning to do now. Leave. Figured you'd say that. Wade pulled out a pipe, didn't light it, just turned it over in his hands. Can't say I blame you. What you did, it needed doing, but it changed you, changed how people see you. I know. Some see you as a savior. Others see a killer who happens to be on our side. Few see the preacher anymore. Wade met his eyes. Question is, who do you see? Elias looked at his hands, scarred and steady. The same hands that had held a Bible. The same hands that had pulled triggers 27 times. I see what I've always been, he said quietly. What I tried to bury. What I couldn't escape. And what's that? A survivor. Elias closed his eyes. Nothing more. Nothing less. Wade sat with him for a while longer, saying nothing, offering the only comfort he could, presence without judgment. When Elias could finally walk, he left the doctor's house and went to the church. The building was empty, cold. Someone had cleaned up the blood from the street, but the memories remained. He packed what little he owned. Not much. Never had been much. A man traveling light could disappear easier. The town gathered to watch him leave, just like they'd gathered to watch him arrive 5 years ago. Different faces, same curiosity. But the warmth was gone now, replaced by uncertainty, fear maybe, of what he was, what he might become. Sheriff Wade handed him the remaining money from Kincaid's safe. It's yours. You earned it. Blood money. Money's just money. What you do with it makes it clean or dirty. Wade pressed the heavy pouch into his hands. Take it. Build something better somewhere else. Elias took it because refusing felt like false humility. He'd killed for this money, whether he wanted it or not. He rode out at noon on a horse someone had donated, not Redemption, who'd died somewhere on the mountain, but a sturdy bay that didn't shy from the smell of blood. The trail led west, away from the mountains, toward territory he'd never seen. Fresh country. New chances. But as the town disappeared behind him, Elias knew the truth. You couldn't outrun what you were, couldn't bury it, couldn't pray it away, couldn't kill it. You could only survive it. And he'd gotten very, very good at surviving. The bay carried him west for 3 weeks before Elias found what he was looking for, a place empty enough that his past couldn't follow. The town of Salvation Creek sat in a valley so remote that even the railroad had bypassed it, leaving behind a collection of weathered buildings and people who asked few questions. Perfect. Elias paid cash for a cabin 2 miles outside town, up in the foothills where pine trees grew thick enough to hide a man who wanted hiding. The previous owner had died over winter, froze to death, the land agent said, too drunk to keep his fire going. Elias didn't ask about family, didn't want to know. The cabin was small. 1 room, a stone fireplace, walls that let wind through the gaps. He spent the first week making it livable, cutting timber to patch the holes, cleaning out the debris of the previous tenant's final days. Found a bottle under the floorboards, still half full. Poured it out and watched the whiskey darken the dirt. He wasn't that man anymore. Wasn't the preacher either. Wasn't sure what he was, except tired. The town left him alone for the most part. He'd ride in once a week for supplies, pay with coins that raised no eyebrows, and ride back out before anyone could start a conversation. The shopkeeper called him the hermit. Elias didn't correct him, but isolation had a price. The quiet gave his thoughts room to grow, and his thoughts were ugly company. He'd wake in the dark hearing Thomas scream, see Sarah's eyes, wide and empty, staring at nothing, feel the weight of 27 deaths pressing against his chest until he couldn't breathe. Some nights he'd stand outside in the cold until his skin went numb, anything to feel something other than the weight. Other nights he'd clean his guns. The Colt sat on the mantel now, oiled and loaded within reach. He told himself it was habit. Told himself a man living alone needed protection. But the truth sat heavier. He didn't know how to exist without them anymore. They'd become part of him, extensions of his hands, tools for the only thing he was truly good at. Killing. 2 months passed. Then 3. Spring came to the mountains, melting snow and turning the creek behind his cabin into a roar of white water. Elias planted a garden because that's what people did when they wanted to stay somewhere. Potatoes, carrots, beans, simple things that didn't require faith in tomorrow. He was checking the seedlings one morning when he heard the horses, 4 riders coming up the trail to his cabin. Elias's hand went automatically to his hip, found the gun belt he'd started wearing again. He straightened slowly, watching them approach. The lead rider was a woman, late 30s, with dark hair pulled back severe and eyes that measured him with professional coldness. The 3 men behind her had the look of hired help, competent, armed, alert. "Elias Crow?" the woman asked. "Depends who's asking." She swung down from her horse with practiced ease. "My name is Catherine Ross. I represent certain business interests in the territory. You're a hard man to find." That was the idea. I'm sure. She glanced at the cabin, the garden, the whole hermit setup. "You've made quite a reputation for yourself. The preacher who killed Kincaid's entire operation single-handed. 27 men. 23, Elias corrected. 4 died in town before I left." "Ah, precision. I appreciate that." Catherine pulled off her riding gloves. "I have a proposition for you, Mr. Crow, one that could make you a very wealthy man." "Not interested." "You haven't heard it yet." "Don't need to." Elias turned back to his garden. "I'm done with that life." "Are you?" Catherine's voice carried an edge now. "Because from where I stand, you're a man with considerable skills and no purpose. That's dangerous, Mr. Crow, to yourself and others." Elias didn't turn around. "Leave." "There's a man," Catherine continued, ignoring him. "Marcus Holt. He runs a freight operation out of Silver Fork, legitimate on the surface. Underneath, he's moving guns to both sides of the Navarro-Sanchez conflict, profiting from a war that's killed hundreds. Not my problem. He also killed my brother." The words came flat, emotionless. "Shot him in the back over a shipment dispute. Made it look like bandits." Elias's hand stilled in the dirt. He stood, turned. "Go to the law." "Holt owns the law in Silver Fork, owns the mayor, the judge, half the territory." Catherine met his eyes. "You know how this works. Men like Holt don't face justice. They face men like you." "I'm not a hired killer." "No. You're a man who kills when he has to." She pulled an envelope from her coat. $10,000. Half now, half when Holt's dead. Enough to disappear properly this time. Mexico, maybe. Or Canada. Somewhere even your reputation can't find you. The envelope landed on the ground between them. Elias looked at it, then at Catherine, then at the three men still mounted, hands resting casually near their weapons. If I say no, then we leave. No hard feelings. Catherine smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. But you'll still be here in this cabin, pretending you're something you're not. And men like Holt will keep killing, keep profiting, keep winning. That's not fair? No, it's not. Catherine pulled her gloves back on. But fairness is for people who still believe the world makes sense. You and I know better. She mounted her horse, gathered the reins. The offer stands for 1 week. After that, I find someone else. Someone less qualified, probably. Someone who'll make a mess of it. She looked down at him. But you could do it clean, quick, the way you did Kincaid's camp. They rode off, leaving dust and the envelope behind. Elias stared at it for a long time. $10,000. Enough to start over properly. Build something real instead of hiding in the woods like a wounded animal. He picked up the envelope, felt the weight of the bills inside. That night he got drunk for the first time in 6 years. Sat by the fire with the whiskey he'd bought in town. Told himself he was buying it for medicinal purposes, never touched it until now, and tried to decide who he was. The bottle was half empty when someone knocked on his door. Elias's gun was in his hand before his mind caught up with his body. He moved to the window, peered out. A man stood on his porch, hands visible, unarmed, young, maybe 25, with a face that looked familiar in the firelight. "Mr. Crow," the man called. "I don't mean trouble. I need to talk to you." Elias opened the door, gun leveled. "Talk fast." The young man looked at the gun, swallowed hard. "My name's Daniel Ross, Catherine's nephew. She didn't tell you everything." "Figured that. Come in. But if your hands go anywhere I don't like, you'll need a closed casket." Daniel stepped inside, carefully, keeping his hands visible. Up close, Elias could see the family resemblance, same dark hair, same measuring eyes. But where Catherine had been cold, this kid was scared. "What didn't she tell me?" Elias asked. "Holt didn't just kill Uncle James. He killed my father, too, and my cousin, and 6 other men who worked for my family." Daniel's voice shook. "He's trying to push us out of the freight business, take everything we built. So this is revenge. This is survival." Daniel met his eyes. "If Holt isn't stopped, my family's finished. Bankrupt or dead, take your pick." Elias lowered the gun, but didn't put it away. "Why tell me this?" "Because Aunt Catherine, she's not telling you the whole truth. Yes, we want Holt dead, but it's not just about justice. It's about saving what's left of our business." Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "I thought you should know. Thought you deserved the truth before you decide." "And what do you think I should decide?" "I think you should walk away." The words came out hard, like they hurt. "I've heard the stories about you, what you did at that mining camp. You're good at killing, Mr. Crow. Maybe the best. But killing Holt won't bring anyone back, won't fix anything." "Your aunt know you're here?" "No, she'd skin me alive if she did." Daniel moved toward the door. I've seen enough death. Don't want to be part of adding to it, even if the man deserves it." He left, and Elias was alone again with the whiskey and the envelope and the guns on the mantel. He didn't sleep that night. Sat watching the fire burn down to coals, thinking about what Daniel had said. The kid was right. Killing Holt wouldn't fix anything. Wouldn't bring back Sarah or Thomas. Wouldn't make Elias anything other than what he was. But Catherine was right too. Men like Holt didn't face justice. They faced men like Elias. And if not him, then who? Dawn found him on this trail to Silver Fork, the envelope heavy in his saddlebag. He told himself he was just going to look. Scout the situation. See if Holt was really as bad as Catherine claimed. But the guns on his hips said different. Silver Fork was bigger than Salvation Creek, sprawled along both sides of a river that had given the town its name. 2 banks, 3 saloons, a proper hotel. The kind of place where money moved and nobody asked where it came from. Elias rode in at midday, when the streets were full enough that one more stranger wouldn't draw notice. He tied his horse outside the smaller saloon, the one that didn't look like it catered to Holt's people, and went inside. The bartender was old, with scars that said he'd lived through interesting times. Elias ordered whiskey, paid with a coin that wasn't too large, and listened. Holt's bringing in another shipment tomorrow, someone was saying at a corner table. Rifles, probably. Maybe ammunition. Where from? East. Always from the east. Man's got connections all the way to Chicago. And we just let him do it? Ship weapons to both sides while our boys die? What are we supposed to do? He owns the sheriff, owns the mayor, hell, probably owns half the territory by now. Elias nursed his drink, filing information. The shipment. Tomorrow. East side of town, probably. That's where the freight warehouses were. You new in town? The voice came from behind him. Elias turned slowly, found a man in a deputy's badge watching him with suspicious eyes. Passing through, Elias said. Long way to pass through. This town's not on the way to anywhere. The deputy moved closer. You got business here? Looking for work. What kind of work? The kind that pays. Elias met the deputy's eyes, let him see enough to be worried, but not enough to be certain. Heard Holt's outfit might be hiring. The deputy's hand drifted toward his gun. Holt doesn't hire drifters. Didn't say I was a drifter, said I was looking for work. Elias finished his whiskey, set the glass down carefully. But if he's not interested, I'll move on. No trouble. For a moment, the deputy looked like he was deciding whether to push it. Then something in Elias's face, some echo of the man who'd killed 23 people in one night, made him reconsider. Be smart, the deputy said. Move on by nightfall. He left. Elias waited 5 minutes, then followed. The streets of Silver Fork told their own story. Holt's freight wagons dominated the traffic, marked with a bright red H on their sides. Men in matching coats, Holt's private security, stood on corners, watching everything. The whole town had the feel of occupied territory. Elias found the freight office on the east side, like he'd guessed. 2-story building, solid construction, guards at every entrance. A man didn't fortify a legitimate business like that. He was studying the layout when a voice spoke behind him. See something interesting? Elias turned to find a woman leaning against a wall, maybe 30, with red hair and a smile that didn't match the calculation in her eyes. Just admiring the architecture, Elias said. That's so. Most folks admire it from further away. Less likely to catch a bullet that way. She pushed off the wall, came closer. You're the one asking about work. Word travels fast in a town this size. Didn't catch your name. Grace. Grace Holloway. She looked him up and down. You're not here for work. You've got that look. What look? The kind men get before they do something stupid and violent. Grace pulled a cigarette from her pocket. Didn't light it. I've seen it before. Usually right before a funeral. Maybe I just have that kind of face. Maybe. She studied him with eyes that had seen too much. Or maybe Catherine Ross already got to you. She in town? Elias kept his expression neutral. Don't know any Catherine Ross. Sure you don't. Grace finally lit the cigarette, blew smoke toward the sky. Let me save you some trouble. Holt's got 30 men working for him. All armed, all loyal, all mean. Whatever Catherine's paying you, it's not enough. Who says anyone's paying me anything? Nobody rides into Silver Fork asking about Holt unless they're working for him or against him. And you don't have that Holt smell about you. She took another drag. So that leaves against. Elias said nothing. Grace sighed. Look, I don't care what happens to Holt. Man's a bastard, but he's a careful bastard. You go after him straight, you'll be dead before you clear leather. Then how would you do it? The question surprised her. She studied him again, reassessing. You serious? Serious about staying alive. Grace glanced around, checking who might be listening. There's a poker game tonight. High stakes. Holt plays every Tuesday like clockwork. Private room at the Grand Hotel. Usually brings 2 bodyguards, sometimes 3. She dropped the cigarette, ground it under her heel. He's vulnerable there. Still dangerous, but vulnerable. Why tell me this? Because Holt killed someone I cared about. And because I'm tired of watching him run this town like his personal kingdom. Grace met his eyes. You do this, do it right. Don't leave wounded. Don't leave witnesses. And for the love of everything, don't miss. She walked away before Elias could respond. He spent the rest of the day preparing. Found a room at a boarding house on the edge of town, one with a back exit. Cleaned his guns twice. Ate a meal he didn't taste. Tried not to think about the fact that he was about to walk into a room full of armed men and start shooting, just like the old days. The Grand Hotel sat in the center of town, 3 stories of brick and pretension. Elias watched it from across the street as evening fell, counting guards, noting exits, building a map in his head. 2 guards at the front entrance, 1 in the lobby, probably more upstairs near the private room. Call it 6, maybe 8, plus Holt himself and whoever else was at the poker table. Bad odds. But he'd faced worse. Elias waited until 9, when the game would be well underway and guards might be relaxed. Then he crossed the street and walked through the front door like he owned the place. The lobby guard looked up, hand going to his gun. "Help you?" "Looking for the poker game. Was told there might be an open seat." "Game's invitation only." "I know. That's why I brought this." Elias pulled out a roll of bills, part of Catherine's advance. "Tell Mr. Holt that Elias Crow would like to buy in. He'll know the name." The guard's eyes widened slightly at the money, then narrowed at the name. "Wait here." He disappeared upstairs. Elias stood in the lobby, hands loose at his sides, counting heartbeats. The second guard watched him from across the room, hand resting on his gun belt. The first guard returned. "Mr. Holt says you can come up, but leave the hardware." "Can't do that." "Then you can't come up." Elias smiled cold. "Tell Mr. Holt that if he's scared of one armed man, maybe he shouldn't be running an operation this big. Tell him I'm coming up with my guns or I'm leaving with my money. His choice." The guard looked uncertain. Disappeared upstairs again. This time when he came back, he looked annoyed. "3rd floor, room 12. But if you try anything—" "I know. I'll be dead before I hit the floor." Elias moved toward the stairs. Heard it before. The stairs creaked under his boots. 2nd floor, 3rd floor. A guard stood outside room 12, bigger than the others, with eyes that had seen violence and wasn't impressed. "Elias Crow," the guard said. "The preacher who killed Kincaid's gang." "That's what they tell me." "Heard you were dead." "Heard wrong." Elias stopped in front of him. "We gonna stand here all night, or can I play cards?" The guard opened the door. The room was thick with smoke and tension. 5 men sat around a table covered in cards and money. 4 looked like merchants or ranchers playing above their means. The 5th was Marcus Holt. He was younger than Elias expected, maybe 40, with a neat beard and expensive clothes. Handsome in a way that suggested he'd traded on looks before talent. His eyes, though, those were old, knowing, dangerous. "Mr. Crow," Holt said, voice smooth as good whiskey. "I confess I'm surprised. When I heard you'd retired, I assumed that meant you'd learned wisdom. Just taking a break." Elias pulled out a chair, sat down, put his money on the table. "Heard you run a good game." "I run several good games." Holt dealt cards with practiced ease. "The question is which one you're here to play." "Just poker tonight." "Is that right?" Holt studied his cards without looking at them. "Because I also heard that Catherine Ross put a price on my head. 10,000 if the rumors are true." "That about what you're carrying?" The other players had gone still, sensing the shift in the room's temperature. One started to stand. Holt waved him back down. "Relax, gentlemen. Mr. Crow and I are just getting acquainted." Holt finally looked at his cards. 5-card draw, jacks or better to open. Elias picked up his hand. Pair of 3s, nothing worth playing. He folded, watched the others bet. "I'll be honest with you, Crow," Holt said as he raked in a small pot. "I've got no quarrel with you, the Ross family. They're competitors, bad losers. They want me dead because I'm better at this business than they are." "Heard you killed James Ross." "Heard wrong. James got himself killed being reckless. Wrong place, wrong time." Holt dealt another hand. "But his family needs someone to blame. Someone to make the villain. That's business." Elias looked at his new cards. 2 pair, aces and 8s. Dead man's hand. He kept his face neutral. "Here's what I'm offering," Holt continued. "Work for me instead. 20,000. Protect my shipments, handle problems when they arise. You'd be good at it." "Thought you didn't hire drifters." "You're not a drifter. You're a professional." Holt met his eyes. "There's a difference." The betting went around. Elias raised. 2 players folded. Holt called. "What if I say no?" Elias asked. "Then you walk out of here with your money and your life. I'm not a monster, despite what the Ross family says." Holt laid down his cards. "Full house. Kings over jacks. Elias showed his dead man's hand. 2 pair. Shame. Holt collected the pot. See how that works? Sometimes you lose even when you've got decent cards. Sometimes the other guy just has better. And sometimes, Elias said quietly, you're not playing the game you think you're playing. The room went still. Holt's smile didn't waver, but something shifted in his eyes. That sounds like a threat. Just an observation. Elias stood slowly. I appreciate the offer, but I'm going to have to decline. You sure about that? I'm sure. Holt studied him for a long moment, then nodded. Your choice. Can't say I didn't try. He looked past Elias to the guard at the door. See Mr. Crow out. Make sure he leaves town tonight. Elias walked to the door, the guard's hand heavy on his shoulder. He was almost through when Holt spoke again. Crow? One more thing. Elias turned. If I see you in Silver Fork again, I'll assume you've reconsidered my offer, or accepted Catherine's. Holt's smile was gone now. Either way, we'll have a different conversation. Understood? Understood. The guard escorted him downstairs through the lobby, out into the street. Stood there watching as Elias untied his horse and mounted up. You got lucky tonight, the guard said. Mr. Holt's in a generous mood. That what you call it? I call it smart. Smarter than going up against 30 armed men for Catherine Ross's money. Elias gathered his reins. Probably right. He rode out slow, letting them watch him leave. Made it to the edge of town before he circled back, tied his horse in a grove of trees and moved through the darkness on foot. Back toward the hotel. Back toward Holt. Because Grace had been right about one thing. Holt was vulnerable during the poker game. But she'd been wrong about another thing. Elias wasn't planning to walk through the front door. The alley behind the Grand Hotel stank of rotting food, and worse. Elias pressed himself against the brick wall, counting windows, mapping routes. 3rd floor, east side. Room 12 would be the corner unit with the balcony he'd spotted earlier. Getting up there was the problem. A fire escape clung to the building's side, rusted iron that looked ready to give up and fall. Elias tested the lowest rung with his weight. It groaned, but held. He started climbing, moving slow, keeping his boots quiet against the metal. 2nd floor. The window beside him showed an empty hallway, dim lamplight. He kept climbing. 3rd floor. The fire escape ended at a small landing. Beyond it, the balcony to room 12 stood just out of reach, maybe 6 feet of open air between safety and a 3-story fall. Elias looked down once. Mistake. The alley spun beneath him. He looked at the gap instead. 6 feet. He jumped further during the war, running between trenches while bullets chewed up the earth. Of course, he'd been younger then, faster, less shot full of holes. Inside the room, voices carried through the balcony door. Holt's laugh, smooth and confident, cards shuffling, money clinking. Elias backed up as far as the landing allowed, took 3 deep breaths, jumped. His boots hit the balcony rail wrong, slipped. For one terrible second, he was falling, hands grasping at nothing. Then his fingers caught the rail, locked tight. His shoulder, the one that had taken a bullet at Kincaid's camp, screamed in protest. He pulled himself up, got both hands on the rail, hauled his body over, landed hard on the balcony floor, biting back a grunt of pain. Inside, the voices continued. Nobody had heard. Elias drew both Colts, thumbed back the hammers, took one more breath, kicked the balcony door open. The room exploded into motion. Cards flew, chairs scraped, men shouted. The guard by the interior door was fast, gun clearing leather, in under a second. Elias was faster. His first shot took the guard in the chest, punched him back against the wall. His second caught one of the poker players, a rancher type who'd been reaching for a hideout gun. The man's face registered shock, then nothing. Holt dove behind the overturned table. The remaining players scattered, 2 making for the door, one throwing himself out the window in blind panic. Stop! Elias's voice cut through the chaos. Next man moves. I put him down. Everyone froze. Elias moved into the room, keeping his guns level. Glass crunched under his boots from the shattered balcony door. Everybody out, except Holt. The 2 players near the door looked at each other, looked at Elias, decided they valued breathing. They ran. Their footsteps thundered down the hall, followed by shouts as they hit the stairs. That gave Elias maybe 2 minutes before the whole building descended on this room. Catherine Ross sends her regards, Elias said to the overturned table. Figured as much. Holt's voice came calm, conversational. How much is she paying you? Does it matter? Professional curiosity. I offered you 20. She must have gone higher to make this worth the suicide. 10. Holt laughed. 10. She bought you cheap. I'm almost insulted on your behalf. Elias circled the table, keeping his guns trained on where Holt's voice originated. Come out. Make this easier. Easier for who? Holt's hand appeared over the table edge, empty, palm up. Hold on. Let's talk first. Talking time's over. 30,000. Holt's other hand appeared also empty. Cash. Right now. You walk away, tell Catherine I was already dead when you got here. She'd know better. Would she? Bodies have a way of turning up. I've got enemies besides the Ross family. Holt stood slowly, hands still raised. He looked calm despite 2 guns aimed at his chest. 40,000. That's my final offer. You don't have 40,000 in this room. No. But I've got it in town. 1 hour. I can have it here. Holt's eyes were steady, calculating odds. You're a practical man, Crow. I can see it. So let me make this practical. You kill me, you collect 10,000 and start a war with my organization. 30 men looking to avenge their boss. Or you take 40,000, disappear for real this time. Mexico, Canada, somewhere your past can't find you. Footsteps pounded in the hallway. Shouts. The building waking up to violence. Decide fast, Holt said. Because in about 30 seconds, this room fills with my men and we both die. Elias's finger tightened on the trigger. Sarah's face flashed in his mind. Thomas's scream. 27 bodies cooling in the mud. I'm tired of running, he said. Then don't run. Work for me. 40,000 up front, 5,000 a month after. You'd be my head of security. Legitimate work. Legitimate. Elias smiled without humor. You're shipping guns to both sides of a war. I'm meeting demand. That's business, not murder. Holt took a careful step forward. You want to judge me? Fine. But you've killed more men than I ever have. At least I do it for profit, not revenge. The words hit harder than they should have. The door burst open. 3 guards poured through, guns drawn, and Elias was already moving. He shot the first one through the throat, dropped behind the poker table as return fire tore through the space he'd occupied. Holt dove for the interior door. Elias tracked him, fired twice, missed. The shots punched holes in the doorframe as Holt disappeared into the hallway. The second guard tried to flank. Elias caught him with a shot that shattered his kneecap, sent him down screaming. The third guard had better instincts, stayed behind cover, fired measured shots that forced Elias to keep his head down. Elias counted bullets. 3 left in his right gun, 5 in his left. 8 total. He could hear more guards coming up the stairs, boots like thunder, voices shouting orders. The smart move was retreat. Back through the balcony, down the fire escape, lose them in the dark streets. Elias went forward instead. He vaulted the table, but firing as he moved. The third guard's shot missed by inches. Elias's didn't. The man went down with a bullet in his chest and a surprised expression that said he hadn't expected this kind of aggression. Into the hallway. 2 more guards coming up the stairs. Elias shot the first one, watched him tumble backward into the second. Both men went down in a tangle of limbs and curses. Where was Holt? A door slammed somewhere below. 2nd floor, maybe. Elias ran for the stairs, reloading as he moved. His fingers found cartridges by touch, muscle memory from 1,000 fights. 6 bullets loaded, 12 more in his belt. After that, he'd be throwing the guns or swinging them like clubs. He hit the 2nd floor landing and something slammed into his ribs. Not a bullet. A fist. Hard enough to crack bone, drive the air from his lungs. Elias stumbled, got his gun up, found himself staring at the big guard from outside room 12. The man who'd seen violence and wasn't impressed. You should have taken the money, the guard said. He grabbed Elias's gun hand, twisted. The Colt clattered to the floor. Elias brought his other gun around, but the guard was already inside his guard, too close for shooting. A knee came up, caught Elias in the stomach. Then an elbow to the jaw that made his vision flash white. Elias went down hard. Tasted blood. The guard kicked him in the ribs, the ones that had cracked at Kincaid's camp, never healed right. Pain exploded through his chest. Through the haze, Elias saw his dropped Colt, 3 feet away. Might as well have been 3 miles. The guard raised his boot for another kick, Elias caught it, twisted hard. The guard's knee popped. He went down with a shout. Elias scrambled for his gun, got his fingers around the grip, rolled. The guard was drawing his own weapon, face twisted with pain and rage. Elias shot him twice. Center mass. Professional. The guard looked down at the spreading red on his chest, then at Elias. Should have taken the money. He died before he finished the thought. Elias pushed himself up, every movement agony. His ribs were screaming, his jaw felt dislocated. Blood ran from his nose, dripped onto the floor. More footsteps, coming from both ends of the hallway. Trapped. A hand grabbed his arm. Elias spun, gun coming up. Easy. Grace Holloway stood there, eyes wide. This way, now. She pulled him toward a door he hadn't noticed, some kind of service entrance. Through it, down a narrow servant's staircase. Behind them, the guards hit the second-floor hallway, started shouting when they found their dead. The staircase ended in the kitchen. Surprised staff scattered as Grace dragged Elias through, out the back door into the alley. Can you ride? She asked. Can I breathe? Elias coughed, tasted more blood. Probably not, but I'll manage. His horse was gone from where he'd tied it. Of course it was. Someone had probably heard the shooting, stolen it, or Holt's men had found it. Grace whistled. 2 horses appeared from the shadows, reins held by a young man Elias recognized, Daniel Ross. Figured you'd need backup, Daniel said. Aunt Catherine's going to kill me. Get in line. Elias hauled himself into the saddle, bit back a scream as his ribs protested. Holt got away. I saw him, Grace said, mounting her own horse. Headed for his freight office with 6 men. Place is a fortress. Then we go around. Elias gathered his reins. Find another way. There is no other way. That building's got guards on every approach, reinforced walls, rifle ports. Grace looked at him like he was crazy. You can't assault it, not without an army. Don't need an army. Elias kicked his horse into motion. Just need fire. The freight office sat dark and threatening on the east side of town. Daniel had been right. It was built like a fortress. Stone foundation, thick walls, narrow windows perfect for defensive shooting, 6 armed guards visible on patrol. Elias, Grace, and Daniel watched from the cover of a nearby warehouse. This is insane, Daniel whispered. Even if you burn it, Holt will just run out the front. His men will cut you down. Not if they're busy fighting the fire. Elias studied the layout. Grace, you said Holt stores his ammunition there? In the basement. Why? Because ammunition burns. Elias turned to Daniel. You want out of this? Now's the time. No shame in it. Daniel's jaw set hard. My father died because of Holt. I'm staying. Good. I need you to start a fire on the west side. Nothing big. Just enough smoke to pull some guards that direction. And then? Then you run like hell and don't look back. Elias checked his guns. Grace? I'm not leaving either. Didn't ask you to. Need you to get the horses ready. When this goes bad, and it will go bad, we'll need a fast exit. Grace nodded. How bad are we talking? Remember the mining camp? Elias smiled without warmth. Worse. They split up. Daniel circled west with matches and lamp oil. Grace took the horses to a prearranged meeting point 2 blocks away. Elias moved alone through the shadows toward the freight office's east wall. 2 guards stood near the loading dock, smoking, talking in low voices. Elias watched them for 5 minutes, timing their pattern. Every few minutes, one would walk a circuit while the other stood watch. When the circuit walker rounded the corner, Elias moved. The standing guard died without a sound, Elias's knife opening his throat before he could scream. Elias lowered the body gently, took the man's rifle, waited. The circuit walker came back around, saw his partner missing, started to call out. Elias shot him with the rifle. The sound cracked across the quiet street. Inside the freight office, voices erupted. Elias ran for the loading dock door, crashed through it into darkness. Crates everywhere. The smell of oil and gunpowder. He fired the rifle blindly behind him, heard shouts, dropped the empty weapon and drew his Colts. He's inside, someone yelled. East entrance, boots thundered. Elias moved deeper into the building, using crates for cover. A guard appeared ahead. Elias shot him. Another came from the left. Elias put 2 rounds through his chest, 4 bullets left in his right gun, 5 in his left. Where was Holt? The answer came in the form of gunfire from above. Second floor, shooting down through gaps in the flooring. Wood splinters exploded around Elias. He dove behind a crate marked "Rifles, handle with care." "Burn 'em out!" Holt's voice echoing from somewhere above. "Set the charges." Charges? Elias's blood went cold. If Holt had the building rigged to blow, outside fire bloomed on the west side. Daniel's diversion. Guards shouted, ran that direction. The gunfire from above slackened as men repositioned. Elias used the distraction to move, found stairs leading down. The basement, where the ammunition was stored, where Holt would be preparing to destroy everything rather than let it fall into enemy hands. The basement was darker than the floor above. Elias struck a match, held it high. The light revealed crates stacked to the ceiling, rifles, ammunition, powder kegs. Enough to level half the block if it went up. And in the center, Marcus Holt, placing charges with calm precision. "Persistent," Holt said without turning. "I'll give you that." Elias raised his gun. "Step away from the charges." "Or what? You'll shoot me and risk igniting this whole room?" Holt finally turned, smiled. "I don't think so, Crow. You're smarter than that." "Am I?" Elias thumbed back the hammer. "Because I'm thinking maybe I'm just tired. Tired of running. Tired of men like you winning because you're willing to do things others won't." "Men like me?" Holt's smile faded. "You've killed 30 people in the last 6 months. Don't pretend we're different." "We're not. That's the problem." Elias pulled the trigger. The bullet hit Holt in the shoulder, spun him around. He clutched at the wound, face going pale with shock. You shot me." "Yeah." Elias advanced, gun steady. "Turns out I'm not that smart after all." Holt stumbled backward, hit the charges. Something sparked. Both men froze. The spark died without catching. For 3 seconds, neither breathed. "We need to leave," Holt said, voice shaking now. "Those charges, they're on a timer. 5 minutes. If we don't, how do I disarm them?" "You can't. I'm the only one who knows the mechanism." Holt pressed his good hand to his bleeding shoulder. "We leave together, or we die together. Your choice." Footsteps above. Guards coming back from the fire. They'd be down here in seconds. Elias looked at Holt. At the charges. At the stairs. Made his choice. He grabbed Holt by the collar, dragged him toward the stairs. "Move." They hit the ground floor just as guards poured in from the west entrance. Saw Elias. Saw their bleeding boss. Started shooting. Elias shoved Holt ahead of him, used the man as a shield and motivation both. Bullets tore through the air. One caught Holt in the leg. He screamed, went down. "Get up!" Elias hauled him upright. "Move or die here." They crashed through the east door into the street. Behind them, guards were shouting, giving chase. And somewhere in the basement, charges were ticking down. Grace appeared on horseback, leading Elias's mount. "Go!" Elias threw Holt across the saddle like a sack of grain, pulled himself up behind, kicked the horse into a gallop just as the first guard cleared the door. They made it 2 blocks before the freight office exploded. The sound was like the world ending. A fireball rose into the night sky, turned darkness into day. The shockwave hit them from behind, nearly unseated Elias from the saddle. Glass shattered in buildings for blocks around. When the debris stopped falling, Elias looked back. The freight office was gone. Just gone. In its place, a crater in flames reaching toward the stars. "The guards," Grace said quietly. "The ones who were still inside." "Dead," Elias finished. "All of them." Holt groaned from across the saddle. "My building, my inventory, 20 years of work." "Shut up," Elias said without sympathy. "You're alive. That's more than your men can say." They rode hard for an hour, putting distance between themselves and Silver Fork. Finally stopped in a grove of trees where Daniel was waiting with supplies. Elias dragged Holt off the horse, let him collapse in the dirt. The man was pale, bleeding from 2 wounds, shaking with shock. "Bandage him," Elias told Grace. "Don't need him dying yet." While she worked, Elias walked to the edge of the grove, stared back at the orange glow on the horizon. Another town. Another massacre. Another set of bodies he'd be seeing in his sleep. Daniel approached quietly. "What now?" "Now we take him to your aunt. Let her decide what happens next." "You could just kill him. Finish it." Elias looked at the young man. "Could. But I'm done making those decisions. done being the executioner. He turned back to Holt, bleeding and broken. Besides, I think letting him live might be the worst punishment. They made camp in the grove, took turns keeping watch. Holt drifted in and out of consciousness, muttering about his losses, his ruined empire. Morning came gray and cold. Elias was checking his guns when Grace sat down beside him. "You know Catherine won't pay you now," she said. "Holt's not dead. Job's not done." "I know. So why keep him alive?" Elias was quiet for a long moment. "Because I'm trying to figure out if there's a difference between justice and revenge. And if there is, which one I've been doing." "Find an answer?" "No." He holstered his guns. "But I'm starting to think maybe that's the question I should have been asking all along." They reached Catherine and Ross's ranch 2 days later, a sprawling compound north of Silver Fork, with high walls and armed guards, the kind of place built by people who expected trouble. Catherine met them in the yard, flanked by her men. Her face was unreadable as she watched Daniel and Elias drag Holt down from the horse. "You were supposed to kill him," she said to Elias. "Plans changed. I paid you to complete a job." "You paid me half, for half a job." Elias pushed Holt forward. The man stumbled, went to his knees. "He's alive. Ruined, but alive. His freight operation is destroyed. His men are dead. His money burned. That good enough?" Catherine walked a slow circle around Holt, studying him like a specimen. "My brother is still dead. And killing this man won't change that." Elias met her eyes. "Trust me. I've tried the revenge path. It doesn't lead where you think." "Then where does it lead?" "More bodies, more ghosts." Elias turned away. "I'm done adding to the count." He started toward his horse. Catherine's voice stopped him. "The money. You're just walking away from $5,000? Keep it. Consider it payment for whatever you're about to do to him." Elias swung into the saddle. "Just one thing. If you do kill him, make it quick. Man suffered enough." "After what he did? Quick is mercy he doesn't deserve." "Maybe. But mercy's not about what people deserve." Elias gathered his reins. "It's about what kind of person you want to be when it's over." He rode out without looking back. Grace and Daniel caught up to him a mile down the road. "Where will you go?" Daniel asked. "Don't know. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere I can figure out who I am when I'm not killing people." "Good luck with that," Grace said. "Men like us, peace never quite fits right." "Then I'll learn to live uncomfortable." Elias looked at her. "What about you?" "Think I'll stick with Daniel. Someone needs to keep this idiot alive." She smiled. "Besides, the Ross family is going to need good people if they're going to rebuild clean. Might be worth seeing if that's possible." They rode together until the trail forked. Grace and Daniel went east, back toward Silver Fork, and whatever future they'd build from the ashes. Elias went west toward mountains and horizons that held no memories. 3 weeks later, he found a valley so remote it didn't have a name. Built a cabin with his own hands, cutting timber and stacking stone. No guns above the mantel this time. He buried them under the floorboards, wrapped in oiled cloth, just in case. But he didn't take them out. The garden he planted grew better this time. Potatoes, carrots, beans. Simple things that required patience, not violence. Some nights he'd stand outside and listen to the silence. No gunfire, no screams. Just wind in the pines and water in the creek, and the slow, steady rhythm of a world that kept turning whether he was killing people or growing vegetables. The ghosts still came. Sarah. Thomas. 27 men cooling in mountain mud, 30 more dying in a freight office explosion. He'd learned to live with them, these visitors who came in the dark. Learned that forgiveness wasn't forgetting, wasn't erasing the past. It was just choosing to keep breathing anyway. One morning, 6 months into his isolation, he woke to find tracks near his cabin. Horse, recent. Someone had been watching him in the night. Elias checked the buried guns, considered digging them up, decided against it. If trouble was coming, it would find him whether he was armed or not. And maybe, just maybe, there were ways to handle trouble that didn't end with bodies in the dirt. He went back to his garden, pulled weeds, checked the irrigation, lived. The tracks were fresh. Someone had stood by his woodpile for a while, judging by the scuff marks, watched his cabin, then left heading north, back toward whatever passed for civilization in these mountains. Elias studied them in the early light, reading the story they told. Single horse, well-shod. Rider light enough that the prints weren't deep. Not one of Holt's remaining men. They'd have come in numbers, come shooting. This was something else. He let it go. Went back to his routine. Chopped wood. Tended the garden. Tried to pretend the tracks didn't itch at the back of his mind like an old wound before rain. 3 days later, the rider came back. Elias was at the creek, filling water buckets, when he heard the horse. He straightened slowly, hands empty, but close to where he'd hidden a knife in his belt. Old habits. The rider came through the trees at an easy pace. Young woman, maybe 25, with sun-darkened skin and eyes that measured him with the calm of someone who'd seen trouble and survived it. She sat the horse well, confident, but not aggressive. "Elias Crow," she said. Not a question. "Depends who's asking." "Name's Elena Martinez." She swung down from the saddle, kept her hands visible. "I've been looking for you for 3 months. Found me. Congratulations." Elias picked up his buckets. "Now you can leave." "I need your help." "Don't do that anymore." "My sister's been taken. Slavers working the territory south of here. They hit our ranch, killed my father, took Maria and 6 other girls." Elena's voice stayed level, but something in her eyes said she was holding herself together through force of will. "Local law won't help. Say there's nothing they can do. There probably isn't. Slavers move fast, cross borders. By now she could be anywhere." "I know where she is." Elena pulled a piece of paper from her coat. "I've been tracking them. They're holding the girls at a compound near Resurrection Pass, waiting for buyers to come up from Mexico." Elias set the buckets down. "How old is your sister?" 16. The number hit him wrong. Too young. Too much like Thomas, whose age Elias couldn't stop himself from calculating. The boy would have been 10 now if he'd lived. "I'm sorry," Elias said, and meant it. "But I can't help you." "Can't or won't?" "Both." He picked up the buckets again. "I'm done with violence. Done being what I was." "What you were?" Elena's voice hardened. "I heard what you did at that mining camp. How you killed 23 men to avenge a woman and her son. What makes my sister less worth saving?" "Nothing. Everything." Elias turned away. "I can't explain it in a way you'd understand." "Try me." He set the buckets down again, harder this time. Water sloshed over the rim. "Every person I kill, I carry with me. Every face, every name when I know it. They follow me into sleep, into waking, into every moment I try to pretend I'm something other than a killer." He met her eyes. "Your sister deserves saving, but I'm not the one to do it, because even if I got her back, she'd see what I am, what I have to become to do that kind of work. And that's not something a 16-year-old girl should have to carry." Elena was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "My sister watched our father die. Watched me take a bullet in the leg trying to protect her. She's already carrying more than any 16-year-old should." She moved closer. "I'm not asking you to be a hero. I'm asking you to do what you're good at, one more time, so that girl has a chance to grow up free." "I'm not good at saving people. I'm good at killing them. There's a difference." "Then kill the men holding her. I don't care which." Elena pulled out a pouch, heavy with coins. "I can pay. Not much, but keep your money." Elias looked past her, at the mountains rising in the distance, at the clean, empty space he'd carved out of wilderness and violence. "I've got enough blood money to last 3 lifetimes." "Then do it because it's right." "Right," Elias laughed, bitter. "I stopped knowing what that meant somewhere between the war and now." Elena studied him for a long moment. "The woman and her son, the ones you avenged, did you know them well?" "Well enough." "Did you love them?" The question caught him off guard. That's not, because from what I heard, you didn't hesitate, didn't stop to think about consequences or carrying ghosts. You just did what needed doing." Elena's eyes were hard now. "So either you loved them enough to kill for them, or you've got some other reason you went to war. And I'm betting it's not one that makes you feel good about yourself." Elias turned away from her, stared at his cabin, his garden, his careful construction of a life without meaning. She was right. He'd killed for Sarah and Thomas, but not because he loved them. He'd killed because seeing them die had given him permission to be what he'd always been underneath the preacher's clothes, a weapon, a tool for violence, and the relief of dropping the pretense had been almost worse than the grief. "I'll give you 1 day to think about it," Elena said behind him. "I'm camped 2 miles north. If you change your mind, follow the creek upstream. He listened to her mount up right away. Stood there in the morning light, hands empty, feeling the weight of choices he didn't want to make. That night, the ghost came worse than usual. Sarah stood at the foot of his bed, dressed clean now, wounds gone. She didn't speak, never did. Just looked at him with eyes that asked questions he couldn't answer. Thomas appeared beside her, gap-toothed smile intact. He reached for Elias's hand the way he used to after services, small fingers trusting and warm. Then the others. The 23 from Kincaid's camp, the 30 from the freight office. Faces he'd seen for seconds before putting bullets through them, names he'd never know. They crowded the cabin, silent accusers, until Elias couldn't breathe. He grabbed the whiskey he'd sworn not to touch, drank until they faded, woke on the floor at dawn with a headache that felt like justice. The floorboards creaked under his knees as he pried them up. The guns lay wrapped in cloth exactly where he'd buried them 6 months ago. Elias pulled them out slowly, unwrapped them, found them still clean, still ready, still waiting. He loaded them with hands that didn't shake, strapped on the gun belt that settled around his hips like coming home. Looked at himself in the small mirror and saw the preacher was gone completely now. Just the killer remained. 2 miles upstream, he found Elena's camp. She looked up from her morning coffee, didn't seem surprised to see him. Changed your mind? No. Elias swung down from his horse. But I'm coming anyway. What's the difference? My mind says this is a mistake, that every person I kill takes another piece of whatever's left of my soul. He poured himself coffee without asking. But maybe that's the point. Maybe men like me don't get to keep our souls. We just spend them buying other people's chances. Elena studied him over her cup. That's a bleak way to look at it. You got a better one? Yeah, sometimes the world needs violence answered with violence. Not because it's right, but because it's the only language some men understand. She set down her cup. My sister's 16. Those men took her. I can philosophize about souls after I get her back. Fair enough. They rode south for 2 days, following trails Elena had marked on a hand-drawn map. She'd done her homework, talked to survivors, bribed corrupt officials, pieced together the slavers' operation with the determination of someone who had nothing left to lose. There's 12 of them, she said as they made camp the second night. Maybe 15 if they've hired local help. They keep the girls in a converted barn, guarded day and night. Weapons? Rifles, pistols. One has a shotgun. Elena poked at the fire with a stick. They're not military, but they're not amateurs either. They've been doing this for years. And the girls? How many total? 7 when I last got information. Maria's the youngest. Her voice caught slightly. The others range up to 22. They've been held for 3 weeks. Elias didn't ask what that meant. Didn't need to. 3 weeks in the hands of men who traded human beings left marks that didn't heal. We go in tomorrow night, he said, late when they're tired. You stay back with the horses. Like hell. This isn't negotiable. You're paying me to do a job. I'm not paying you anything. You refused my money, remember? Elena met his eyes across the fire. Maria's my sister. I'm going in. You'll get killed. Maybe, but I'll be there when she needs me. Not hiding in the trees while someone else does the hard part. Elias recognized the look on her face. He'd seen it in his own mirror often enough. The look of someone who'd decided dying was better than living with certain kinds of failure. Fine, he said, but you follow my lead. You do exactly what I say when I say it. Understood? Understood. They reached Resurrection Pass at dusk the next day. The compound sat in a narrow valley, exactly like Elena had described. Converted barn, 2 smaller outbuildings, a main house that looked almost respectable from a distance. Up close, Elias could see the bars on the barn windows, the heavy chains on the doors, the guards walking patrols with weapons that had seen recent use. They watched from the ridge above as night fell, counted men, noted patterns, mapped the layout. 6 guards visible, Elias said. Probably more in the house. We'll need a distraction. I can handle that. Elena pulled out a handful of firecrackers left over from some long-ago celebration. Set these off on the east side. They'll think someone's shooting. That'll pull maybe 3 guards. The others will dig in, protect the asset. The asset. Elena's voice went cold. You mean my sister? I mean the merchandise. That's how they think of her. Elias looked at her. And right now, we need to think like them to beat them. She looked like she wanted to argue, then nodded. What do you need me to do? Set the firecrackers. Give me 5 minutes after the first one pops, then light the rest. When the guards come running, you get to the barn. I'll handle the men. All of them? All of them. They split up as full dark settled. Elias circled wide, came at the compound from the north where the shadows were deepest. His hands found the guns without thought, checked cylinders he'd already checked 3 times. 12 bullets. 15 men. The math didn't work, but it never did. The first firecracker popped. Distant. Sharp. The guards jumped, started shouting. 2 ran toward the sound. A third hesitated, then followed. Elias counted to 60, started moving. The first guard went down silent, knife in the throat before he could shout. Elias lowered him gently, took his rifle, kept moving. The second guard was smarter, stayed by the barn door, ready for trouble. Elias shot him from 30 yards. The man went down hard. Then the compound exploded into chaos. More firecrackers, shouting. The remaining guards poured out of the buildings, trying to figure out which way the attack was coming from. Elias gave them the answer. He walked into the open, both Colts drawn, and started shooting. The first 3 went down before they understood what was happening. The others scattered, diving for cover, returning fire. Bullets tore through the air around Elias. One tugged at his coat. Another scorched past his ear. He kept walking, kept shooting. A guard leaned out from behind the water trough. Elias's bullet found him. Another tried to circle around. Elias was faster. 6 down, maybe 7. He'd lost count. His guns clicked empty. Elias dropped behind a wagon, reloaded with hands that worked by memory alone. Bullets thudded into the wood above his head. "It's just one man," someone shouted. "Rush him!" They came in a group, 4 of them, weapons firing. Amateur move, panic thinking. Elias shot the leader first, watched the others stumble over him. Shot the second. The third turned to run. Elias let him take 3 steps, then put him down. The fourth dropped his gun, raised his hands. "Don't! Please! I surrender!" Elias shot him anyway. The compound went quiet except for the crackling of a fire Elena had started with the firecrackers. Elias stood, surveyed the bodies. 11? 12? The count was getting muddy. Movement from the house. Elias turned, guns rising. A man stumbled out, hands empty, face white with terror. "Don't shoot! I'm not armed! Where are the rest? Dead! You killed them all! Jesus, you killed them all! How many were in the house?" 3, including me. The others ran or... The man looked at the bodies scattered across the compound. "You're him, the preacher, the one who killed Kincaid's gang. Where are the keys to the barn?" The man pointed at a body near the door. "Hector. He's got them." Elias walked to Hector, found the keys on a ring at his belt. Behind him, the unarmed man was still talking, babbling about how he'd only been hired 2 weeks ago, how he didn't know what the operation was about, how he had a family. Elias turned. The man saw his eyes, stopped talking. "Run," Elias said. The man ran. Elena appeared from the shadows, limping on her wounded leg. "The girls?" Elias tossed her the keys. "In the barn. I'll check the house, make sure it's clear." She caught the keys, held them tight. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. Not until you see what they did to her." He cleared the house room by room, found 2 more guards trying to hide in a closet. They begged. He shot them. Found documents detailing shipments, prices, buyers. Enough evidence to hang everyone involved. He burned it all. Outside, he heard crying. Not screaming, just the kind of broken sobbing that came from relief and trauma mixing together. Elena emerged from the barn with 7 girls. They clung to each other, to her, some unable to walk without help. The youngest, Maria, had to be Maria, looked like a ghost. 16 going on 60, eyes that had seen too much. She looked at Elias, at the guns on his hip, at the bodies scattered across the compound. "You came," she said quietly. "Your sister came. I just did what I'm good at." Maria turned to Elena, buried her face in her sister's shoulder. "I want to go home. We're going, right now." Elena looked at Elias over her sister's head. "What about you?" "I'll clean up here, make sure nobody follows you." "There's no one left to follow." "Then I'll make sure anyway." Elias turned toward the barn. Get them out of here. Get them somewhere safe. Elena gathered the girls, started moving them toward where the horses were hidden. Maria looked back once at Elias standing alone among the dead, and something in her expression said she understood what he'd become to save her. Whether she was grateful or horrified, he couldn't tell. Maybe both. The sun was rising by the time Elias finished. He dragged the bodies into the barn, set it all ablaze. Burned the evidence, the compound, everything. Let the fire consume it like it had consumed Kincaid's camp, Holt's freight office, all the places where Elias Crow had done what he was good at. He watched it burn until the heat forced him back. Then he mounted his horse and rode north, back toward his cabin, his garden, his carefully constructed isolation. The valley looked the same when he returned. The cabin still stood. The garden had grown in his absence, weeds mixing with vegetables, nature reclaiming what he'd tried to tame. Elias stood in the doorway, gun still heavy on his hips, and tried to remember why he'd thought this place could offer peace. It couldn't. It never could. Because peace wasn't a place. It was a state of mind, and his mind was full of ghosts. He counted them now, in the morning light. Sarah, Thomas, 23 at Kincaid's camp, 30 at the freight office, 14 at the slaver compound, 67 faces total, 67 deaths he owned. The number should have meant something, should have been unbearable. Instead, it just felt like who he was. Elias unpacked his saddlebags slowly, found food he didn't remember buying. A letter from Elena, probably slipped in while he wasn't looking. He opened it. Mr. Crow, Maria and the other girls are safe. We've found places for them to heal, people who understand what they've been through. I won't pretend they're all right. They're not. But they're alive because of you. Whatever you think about the cost to your soul, know that 7 girls are breathing because you were willing to pay it. That has to count for something. E. Martinez. Elias read it twice, put it on the mantel where the guns used to sit. That night the ghosts came again, but this time 7 new faces appeared with them. Not accusing, not silent, just present. The girls from the barn, alive in his memory instead of dead. Sarah and Thomas were there too, standing at the back of the crowd. They looked different now, peaceful, maybe, or just resigned. Elias sat up, looked at them all. I don't know what you want from me, he said to the empty cabin. I don't know how to balance the scales, how to make 53 deaths worth 7 lives saved. No one answered, but slowly, one by one, the ghosts faded. Not gone, just stepped back. Gave him room to breathe. In the morning, Elias made a decision. He couldn't be a preacher anymore. Couldn't pretend that words and faith could fix what violence had broken. But maybe there was something between that and the killer he'd become. He rode into the nearest town, 3 days south, small enough to have problems, but too poor to solve them. Found the sheriff, old and tired, holding together a territory too big for one man. I'm looking for work, Elias said. The sheriff looked him over. Saw the guns, the scars, the eyes that had seen too much. What kind of work? The kind nobody else wants to do. The problems you can't solve with law and patience. You talking about killing? I'm talking about keeping people safe. However that needs to happen. The sheriff leaned back in his chair. There's bandits hitting the mining camps west of here, taking payroll, killing guards. Law can't touch them. They cross into territory where I've got no jurisdiction. And if they stopped, then a lot of good people would sleep better. But I can't pay you much. This is a poor territory. I don't need much. Elias thought about the blood money from Kincaid, from Holt. I've got enough to last. I just need a reason to keep going that doesn't involve running from my past. The sheriff studied him for a long moment. What's your name? Elias Crow. Recognition flashed across the sheriff's face. The preacher was a preacher. Now I'm just a man who's good at one thing. And what's that? Surviving what needs to be survived. The bandits went down hard 3 weeks later. Elias tracked them to their camp, gave them one chance to surrender. They chose shooting instead. He buried them in unmarked graves and brought the stolen payroll back to the miners. Didn't ask for thanks. Didn't get much. But the nightmares were a little quieter that night. Word spread. Other towns started sending for him. A rapist terrorizing homesteads. A gang shaking down merchants. Problems that needed solving in ways the law couldn't touch. Elias solved them. Not cleanly, not without cost, but he solved them. And slowly, the ledger started to shift. Not balance. It would never balance. You couldn't make up for 67 deaths by saving lives later. Math didn't work that way. Morality didn't work that way. But maybe it didn't have to balance. Maybe the point wasn't redemption. Maybe it was just choosing, every day, to be slightly less of a monster than you were capable of being. 5 years passed. Then 10. Elias grew older, slower. The scars accumulated. His hands developed a tremor that made drawing harder. His eyes weren't what they'd been. But he kept working, kept doing what he was good at, until the day a young woman rode into his camp, different mountains, same isolation, with a problem that needed solving. She looked familiar, took him a moment to place her. Maria Martinez, 26 now. The ghost of the 16-year-old he'd saved long faded into a woman who'd learned to live with her scars. "Mr. Crow," she said, "I need your help. Thought you'd want to stay as far from me as possible." "I did, for a long time." She swung down from her horse. "But there's a situation. Girls being taken from ranches near the border. Same operation as before, or close enough." Elias felt tired in a way that had nothing to do with age. "And you want me to do what I did before?" "No." Maria shook her head. "I want you to teach me how to do it myself." "What?" "I've been learning, training. I'm a decent shot now, good tracker, but I need someone who knows how men like that think, how they operate, how to beat them." She met his eyes. "You saved me once. Now I want to learn how to save others." Elias looked at her, at the determination in her face, the scars she'd turned into purpose. "This life," he said slowly, "it takes pieces of you, leaves marks that don't heal. You end up carrying ghosts." "I'm already carrying them. Might as well make them count for something." He recognized the logic. It was his own, reflected back. "All right," he said finally. "I'll teach you, but on one condition." "What's that?" "You remember that violence is a tool, not a solution. That every person you kill becomes part of who you are. And that the goal isn't to be good at this. It's to make yourself unnecessary." Maria nodded. "I can live with that." So Elias taught her. Not just how to shoot, though he did that. Not just how to track, though that too. He taught her how to read men, how to spot the difference between someone dangerous and someone scared, how to give people chances they probably didn't deserve because sometimes they surprised you, how to carry the weight of necessary violence without letting it crush you. They worked together for 3 years, saved 16 girls from various situations, killed 28 men who'd made the choice to profit from suffering, and when Maria told him she was ready to work alone, Elias believed her. "What will you do?" she asked. "Don't know. Maybe finally figure out how to live with myself." "If you figure it out, let me know the secret." He smiled. "Don't think there is one. I think you just wake up every day and decide if today's the day you give up or keep trying." "And which do you choose?" Elias looked at his hands, scarred, steady despite the tremor. Hands that had killed 67 people. Hands that had saved maybe 30. "Ask me tomorrow," he said. Maria rode out the next morning. Elias watched her go, felt something like pride, or hope, some emotion he'd thought he'd lost the capacity for. He went back to his cabin, back to his garden. But this time, he didn't bury the guns. He kept them on the mantle, clean and ready, just in case. The ghosts still came at night, probably always would, but their ranks had thinned and the newer ones, the ones he'd saved, not killed, stood at the front now. Sarah and Thomas were still there, at the very back. But they looked different, peaceful, maybe, or just patient, waiting for the day when Elias would stop trying to make up for their deaths and start accepting that he'd done what he could with what he was. That day hadn't come yet, might never come. But Elias kept waking up, kept choosing to try, and in the end, maybe that was the only redemption a man like him could earn. Not forgiveness, not peace, just the stubborn refusal to let the weight of his past stop him from fighting for someone else's future. He stood on his porch that evening, watching the sun set over mountains that had seen him become a preacher, a killer, and something harder to name. The wind carried the smell of pine and growing things. Somewhere in the valley, life continued, messy, complicated, brutal, beautiful. Elias Crow had been part of that brutality, would probably be part of it again before the end. But for now, in this moment, he was just a man standing on a porch, breathing, living, carrying his ghosts with something approaching grace. It wasn't much, but it was more than he'd thought possible on that rain-soaked day when he'd failed Sarah and Thomas. More than he'd deserved, and exactly what he'd earned. The sun finished setting. Elias went inside. Tomorrow would bring whatever it brought, peace or violence, salvation or damnation. He'd face it the way he'd faced everything else since he'd stopped pretending to be something he wasn't. By surviving. Always surviving. Because in the end, that's what men like him did. They survived the choices they'd made, the lives they'd taken, the people they'd failed to save. They woke up every morning with blood on their hands and decided whether to wash it off or add to it. Elias chose washing, most days. And on the days he didn't, he made sure it counted for something. That would have to be enough.